Ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for the speeches, so please can you put your hands together and give a warm welcome to the father of the bride.
As father of the bride, or more informally Catherine's dad, it falls to me to open the batting, and that's something that one is habituated to, that sort of cricket imagery, that the diplomatic service absolutely runs on it. Everything has to be done by the end of the day, which is naturally called close of play. And I think the first thing that I want to do is to welcome you all and say how delighted we are that so many people could come to share the joy of this day. It's been a momentous day, something long looked forward to, and a day that will be long remembered. And we began it in the best possible way by getting the blessing of Almighty God on the marriage of Catherine and Nick at nuptial mass. It's a beautiful church, I think all would agree with that. It is a church that reminds me of a small cathedral in its proportions. It's excellent in every way. To put in a brief local plug, it's the only church in Beckenham that gets a plug in Pevsner, Nicholas Pevsner, the architectural guide to England. It's a real architectural merit. But that's not why we chose it. We chose it because it's our church, it's our parish church, and after our home, it is the cradle of Catherine's Christian faith. It's where she was christened, it's where she made her first communion, it's where she was confirmed, it's where she was an altar girl. Where else could she possibly have been married than our own church? It was the entirely right and natural and good place for this landmark event in her life to take place. And it was also, and I make no apology at all for mentioning this, it was the place where her mother's, my wife Rosemary, my late wife, her requiem was. And I'm a Catholic Christian, we don't do extinction. Rosemary is in heaven and aware of what is happening today on earth. In the words of the preface for the dead at Requiem Masses, was a vita mutatur non tollitur, life is changed, not taken away. It's a different mode of existence, but as a mode of existence it's valid, it's still there. I feel with every fibre of my being that Rosemary is aware of what happened today and rejoices at it, as do the other people who knew Catherine, her grandparents also, sadly now deceased. Now, that event in our lives, which changed them immeasurably in all kinds of ways, the loss of my wife and of Catherine's mother, happened just as Catherine was to go to secondary school at Holy Trinity Convent. And it was not the easiest of beginnings, but she overcame that difficulty, and I want to put on record my great gratitude to my sisters-in-law, Catherine's godmother, and dear friends in the parish who helped me enormously in helping Catherine in those first years at Holy Trinity. And she blossomed there, both academically and in sporting things. She was always very good at sport, though quite apart from getting to secondary school. I well remember when I was posted in Sweden, there was an open-air skating facility, because there were cold winters there, it's easy to have the ice, and there was one called Mamma Barn. And the idea of this, that means mother bear, mother child. The idea was that Swedish mothers could take their children along and introduce them to the joys of ice skating. Now, most Swedish mothers were adept skaters, they were very good at it, they took their kids along. Catherine took Rosemary. Catherine was always much more confident on the ice than my wife was. And I think it was the other way around, it was Barn Mama in that particular case. And I wasn't there then, I was at work at the embassy, but I have strong recollections of a Saturday skiing expedition, long distance, Langlauf skiing as they have it in Sweden. And I was coming down a hill, very careful to bend the knees, keep my balance. This little blonde thing overtook me saying, Daddy, Daddy, I can do it with no stakes. I wouldn't have dared to abandon one, let alone both. She was always very good at that. She blossomed at Holy Trinity, I'm not going to give you a blow-by-blow of academic successes, but she finished as head girl. I mean, I don't want to make out that she was an utter paragon always. Occasionally, schoolwork does fall, and occasionally she wasn't too keen to start things. But of course, like most parents, I had a deterrent, and I use this word carefully because at a rather grim period of the Cold War, I once worked in a department of the Foreign Office which liaised with the Ministry of Defence, and it concerned our nuclear defence against possible Soviet attack, and a grim business altogether. But instead of a deterrent that was measured in megatons, I had my tweed gardening jacket. Now, my tweed gardening jacket was something that I still have. I've had it for a number of decades. It has leather patches, it has a number of holes, it has innumerable seeds and burrs caught in it. If it were put on grass and watered, I'm sure it would sprout probably 20 different species of plant. But on the rare occasions when Catherine showed any disinclination to do her homework, all I had to do was to say, Catherine, go and do your Latin, or I'll meet you at school in my gardening jacket. Daddy, Daddy, I'll do it straight away. It was not something that I very often had to employ. Now, I know obviously very much less about Nick than I do about Catherine, but from what I've come to know of him, I find him a fine young man and a son-in-law to be proud of. In fact, he comes from pretty much within sight of the Yorkshire border. And for those of you who are from the south and don't know this, something you should know about Yorkshiremen and those from the other side of the Pennines is that we always hold that each comes from the second best county. We regard them in a category above all others. And I'm proud of my son-in-law. He and Catherine, I think, will throughout their lives make an excellent team, an exemplary married couple, and I look forward to seeing that blossom and progress as the years go past. He's also, from the little I know, a man of good humour and great forbearance. On one occasion he came to the house. I put him in a room that I'd not slept in for a long time, and I didn't think anybody had. And unknown to me, there'd been a storm, and there were some slates missing behind one of the chimney stacks. And this poor lad slept in a room which eventually had to have a bucket in it, with a plunk, plink, plink. It sounded just like Fingal's cave with the dripping water. Glad to say it's been mended, and if they ever need to have it again, it will be in a better condition. But then I was very impressed with the good humour that he put up with these appalling lodging conditions. But anyway, this is their day, not mine. I began with a cricketing metaphor, an illusion. I think I'll finish with another. Many of you won't have been to Beckenham before. Someone who is buried in Beckenham Cemetery is W.G. Grace, the celebrated cricketer. Now, W.G. Grace went to Yorkshire on several occasions. On one particular occasion, he went to give an exhibition performance, supposedly. A bit cocky, a bit overconfident. Very early on, I think first over, second over, something like that. Right down the wicket, misjudged the ball badly, missed it, miles out of his crease, and stumped. How's that? Not out. How's the main ref? And the umpire replied, lad, young folk have paid to come and see Dr. Grace bat, not to see thee stump. You have come to hear and to see and to spend time with our married couple, not to hear me. All that remains for me to do is to ask you to stand and to drink the health of the bride and groom. Catherine and Nick, bride and groom.
Michael, for those very kind